Hello there. And welcome to the Sleepy Space Science channel. I'm really glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe today was long. Or maybe you're someone who enjoys falling asleep to quiet thoughts about the universe, instead of counting sheep or watching the clock. Either way, you're in the right place. Tonight's journey is slow, gentle, and curious. There's nothing you need to remember. Nothing you need to focus on. Just let the universe carry the thinking for you. You don't have to do anything now. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw relax. Let your breathing slow, in and out. Feel your body grow a little heavier, as if gravity has become a soft blanket, instead of a pull. Your only job is to listen. If your mind wanders, that's perfectly fine. You can drift wherever you want. Because tonight, we're not just thinking about space. We're drifting through a quiet thought experiment. What would happen if the universe slowly stopped producing energy? A universe where stars no longer ignite. Where motion grows gentle. Where warmth fades not suddenly, but patiently. A place where time keeps moving, but nothing new is added to the fire. We'll travel gently, from glowing stars to cooling galaxies, from cosmic engines to the quiet spaces between atoms. Along the way, we'll meet fading starlight, cooling matter, and the slow hush of a universe learning to rest. Some of these ideas might spark curiosity. Others might simply feel calming as you drift toward sleep. And before we begin, if these quiet space journeys help you relax or unwind, consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel. It helps other sleepy minds find their way here too. Now, let's begin. Energy is what keeps the universe active. It powers stars. It fuels motion. It keeps matter warm and moving. Without new energy, everything would begin to slow. The universe wouldn't stop instantly. There would be no sudden darkness. No dramatic collapse. Just a gradual easing of activity. Like a fire slowly becoming embers. Stars are the universe's main energy factories. They shine by turning matter into light. They burn steadily for billions of years. But they don't burn forever. If no new energy were made, each star would simply fade when its fuel runs out. The sky would still glow for a long time. Light already traveling through space would keep moving. Galaxies would remain visible long after their stars stopped producing energy. Like echoes of light, drifting quietly through the dark. Energy doesn't vanish suddenly. It spreads out. It thins. It cools. The universe would grow calmer, not emptier. As you listen, feel your body sinking a little deeper into rest. The world around you is quiet, and the universe can keep changing while you sleep. Without new energy, heat would slowly disappear. Warm regions would cool. Hot stars would dim. Motion would become gentler. Everything would drift toward balance. Galaxies would still rotate. Not quickly. Not brightly. But steadily, for a very long time. Even without new energy, gravity would continue its quiet work. Planets would grow cold. Not suddenly frozen, but slowly cooling. Over unimaginable spans of time. Oceans would still. Atmospheres would settle. Surfaces would rest. Energy is what creates change. Without it, change would slow to a whisper. The universe would not end. It would simply become very quiet. Darkness would deepen. Not as fear, but as rest. A universe without new energy would resemble a long cosmic night. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Nothing here needs your attention. Even atoms would feel the change. Movement inside matter would soften. Vibrations would calm. Activity would fade gently. Matter itself would grow still. Time would continue. Seconds would pass. Years would flow. But events would become rare. Time would feel wide and empty, like an open ocean at night. Nothing would be broken. Nothing would be damaged. The universe would simply stop adding energy to its story. What already exists would slowly settle into peace. This future is sometimes called the heat death of the universe. But it isn't death as we imagine it. It's more like complete rest. A universe fully exhaled. If the universe stopped producing energy, it wouldn't disappear. It would fall asleep. Quietly. Slowly. Peacefully. Stars are born from clouds of gas and dust. They ignite when gravity compresses matter, heating it until fusion begins. Without new energy, no new stars would ever ignite. Star nurseries would remain quiet. Clouds would still exist, drifting slowly through space. But they would never collapse into light. Like unlit candles, waiting without flame. The night sky would slowly stop changing. No new points of light would appear. No fresh stars would join the constellations. What you see would be all there ever is. Old stars would continue their lives. Some would glow faintly for trillions of years. Others would fade sooner. Each one ending gently, without replacement. Galaxies would age together. Their brightest days would pass. Their colors would redden. Their light would soften into deep cosmic dusk. As you listen, feel your body sinking a little deeper into rest. The universe can grow older while you sleep. Supernovae would become rare. Explosions need energy. Without it, the universe would stop being dramatic. Silence would replace spectacle. Black holes would remain. They don't produce energy. They simply exist, quietly bending space and time. In a quiet universe, they would feel right at home. Even black holes would change. Without incoming energy, they would slowly evaporate. Over timescales longer than imagination. A whisper fading into nothing. Light would keep traveling. Photons already released would continue their journey, crossing vast distances, long after stars go dark. Like messages sent long ago, still arriving. Eventually, light would thin out. Not gone, but spread so far it barely warms anything at all. The universe would glow faintly, then dim. Let your breathing stay slow and steady. Nothing here is rushing. Planets would remain in orbit. Gravity doesn't need energy to persist. Motion would continue, like a gentle habit. Worlds circling in silence. But without energy, life as we know it could not continue. Warmth would fade. Chemistry would slow. Biology would rest. Not violently. Peacefully. Oceans would freeze slowly. Ice would spread calmly. Layer by layer. Until motion stopped. A planet at rest. Atmospheres would settle. Winds would disappear. Clouds would still. Skies would remain unchanged. For eternity. The universe would not feel empty. It would feel complete. Balanced. Finished with movement. A long, quiet night. With nothing left to burn. Galaxies would slowly lose their glow. Spiral arms would fade into shadow. Bright cores would dim. What once looked alive would grow quiet and still. Colors would disappear from the cosmos. Blues would soften first. Whites would warm into red. Eventually, even red light would fade into darkness. The universe would not collapse inward. Gravity would keep structures intact. Galaxies would remain where they are, like memories held gently in space. Without new energy, motion would simplify. Fast processes would end. Only slow, predictable movement would remain, like a pendulum nearing rest. Cosmic storms would disappear. No stellar winds. No radiation bursts. No energetic collisions. Only calm motion. Through deep silence. As you listen, feel your body growing heavier. The world around you is quiet, and the universe can continue without effort. Even radiation would weaken. High-energy particles would fade. Space would grow safer, cooler, and calmer. Temperature across the universe would even out. Hot regions would cool. Cold regions would remain cold. Eventually, everything would share the same gentle chill. Physicists call this equilibrium. No heat flow. No gradients. No direction for energy to move. Perfect stillness. Time would feel very wide. Without events. Moments would stretch, losing urgency. An endless, quiet now. Matter would remain, but interaction would slow. Atoms would sit quietly. Particles would drift. Nothing would push them to change. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Nothing needs your attention. Structures would persist longer than you can imagine. Planets, stars, even galaxies. They would remain frozen in place for trillions upon trillions of years. Eventually, even matter may decay. Particles may fall apart. Slowly. Patiently. Without spectacle. This decay would not feel destructive. There would be no sound. No light. Just gradual fading. Like fog thinning at dawn. Nothing would be watching. No observers. No witnesses. Only the universe itself. Quietly existing. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would become simple. No struggle. No urgency. Only presence. Stretching forever. Deep time would stretch open. Without new energy, events would become rare. And long pauses would define existence. Millions of years would pass quietly. Nothing dramatic would happen. No new stars would appear. The universe would simply continue being itself. Galactic collisions would still occur, but without energetic bursts. They would feel slow and graceful, like two clouds passing through each other. Without resistance. The universe would grow extremely old. Older than any story. Older than memory. Age would lose meaning. In endless calm. Darkness would dominate the sky. Not as absence, but as rest. A background where nothing competes for attention. As you listen, feel your body relax further. The universe has nowhere it needs to go. Even gravity would feel gentle. Motion would be predictable. Orbits would stay smooth. Nothing would rush or collide. With urgency. Energy once created structure. Without it, structure remains, but no longer evolves. Like a photograph that never changes. Complex systems would simplify. Chemistry would slow. Reactions would cease. Matter would rest. In stable arrangements. The universe would stop surprising itself. No sudden flares. No unexpected births. Only long continuity. And silence. Stillness would become normal. Motion would be the exception. Change would be rare. Rest would define reality. Let your breathing remain slow and even. Stillness is safe here. Distances would feel infinite. With no new light. Space would seem endless. Quietly separating everything. Without tension. Nothing would call out across space. No signals. No radiation. Just vast separation. Held together by gravity. The universe would not feel lonely. Loneliness requires awareness. The universe would simply be. Without longing. Or need. Existence would continue without purpose. Not meaningless. Just complete. Nothing required. Nothing missing. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would not end. It would settle. It would quiet. It would drift into a long, peaceful cosmic sleep. Stars that remain would glow faintly. Their light would be old. Stretched thin across space. Arriving softly. With little warmth left. This ancient light would feel gentle. It would not glare. It would not flicker. It would simply pass by. Quiet and tired. Eventually, even this light would fade. Not all at once. Not suddenly. But slowly. Until darkness becomes complete. Galaxies would still exist. They would keep their shape. They would hold their stars. They would simply stop shining. As brightly as before. The universe would look frozen. Not because time stopped. But because nothing new is being added to the picture. As you listen, feel your body sink a little deeper. The universe has learned how to be still. Energy once created contrast. Hot and cold. Light and shadow. Movement and rest. Without new energy, contrast would soften. Everything would move toward sameness. Temperatures equalize. Motion evens out. Differences dissolve into balance. This sameness is not emptiness. It is equilibrium. A state where nothing pushes against anything else. A perfect pause. The universe would no longer evolve. No new chapters would begin. No twists would occur. The story would simply rest. On its final page. Time would still pass. But without events. Time would feel invisible. Like a river flowing. With no ripples. Let your breathing remain slow and steady. Time does not need to be noticed. Black holes would become the darkest places. They would hold what remains. They would quietly fade over time. Losing mass. One whisper at a time. Nothing would replace them. No new stars to feed them. No new energy to grow them. They would slowly dissolve. into the background. Eventually, only particles would remain. Drifting. Separated. Barely interacting. A universe reduced to its simplest form. Even these particles would grow lonely in space. Distances would stretch endlessly. Encounters would become rare. Silence would deepen. Beyond imagination. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would become pure stillness. No striving. No motion. Only calm presence. Stretching forever. With no new energy, motion would become rare. Objects would still move, but only because they already were. Nothing would begin moving anew. Everything would coast gently. This coasting would last a very long time. Orbits would slowly widen. Paths would gradually smooth. Movement would feel effortless, like drifting without intention. Eventually, even motion would slow. Not stopping completely, but becoming so subtle, it's almost impossible to notice. The universe would feel paused. Not frozen. Not broken. Just resting in a state where nothing needs to happen. Without energy, nothing competes. No force dominates. No process accelerates. Everything exists side by side, without urgency. As you listen, let your body follow this calm. There is nothing you need to respond to. Even sound would have no place. Sound needs motion. Vibration needs energy. In deep space, silence would be absolute. Silence would stretch endlessly. No echoes. No signals. No background hum. Just quiet existence. Without energy, light loses its power. It no longer heats. It no longer shapes. It only passes by. A faint reminder of motion long ago. Eventually, even that reminder fades. Light thins across distance. Photons stretch beyond usefulness. Darkness becomes complete, but not threatening. Darkness would feel natural. It would not hide danger. It would not feel empty. It would feel like rest. After a very long day, let your breathing remain slow and easy. Darkness here is gentle. The universe would become predictable. No surprises. No sudden change. Only steady, repeating quiet. Across endless time. Predictability brings peace. When nothing can suddenly happen. Nothing needs guarding against. Awareness can soften completely. Existence would require no effort. No resistance. No adjustment. Everything simply remains as it is. The universe would no longer build. But it would also never destroy. It would simply maintain a gentle balance. Forever. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would become a place of perfect calm. No creation. No loss. Only quiet presence. Drifting endlessly. As energy fades, space itself feels calmer. Distances remain vast. But nothing pulls urgently. Nothing calls across the dark. Everything stays where it is. The universe would feel settled into routine. Orbits repeat quietly. Positions change slowly. Nothing interrupts the rhythm. Even gravity feels patient. It holds without demanding. It guides without rushing. Its work becomes subtle and steady. Without energy, tension disappears. No pressure to expand faster. No heat to escape. No imbalance asking to be fixed. The universe reaches neutrality. Forces cancel gently. Motion evens out. Everything rests in calm agreement. As you listen, feel your own body mirroring this balance. Nothing inside you needs to push or pull. Particles drift farther apart. Encounters grow rare. Interactions soften. Each particle travels on its own quiet path. When particles no longer meet, nothing new forms. No reactions. No sparks. Just peaceful separation. Space becomes very empty. Not empty of existence, but empty of activity. Presence remains. Without motion, time continues unnoticed. Without change, there is nothing to mark it. Moments flow together into one long now. The universe does not mind this. It does not grow impatient. It does not wait for something else. It is content to remain. Let your breathing stay slow and effortless. Time does not need counting. All processes eventually finish. Fusion ends. Radiation fades. Motion settles into near stillness. Nothing replaces them. No new engines start. No fresh fuel appears. The universe rests on what already exists. This rest is complete. Nothing aches to move. Nothing needs correction. Balance holds itself. Without effort, existence becomes simple. Matter, space, time, all quietly present. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would become endlessly calm. No beginnings. No endings. Only quiet continuation. Without strain. With no new energy, even change grows tired. Patterns repeat softly. Nothing accelerates. Nothing slows dramatically. Everything remains balanced. Balance becomes permanent. Not forced. Not maintained. Simply existing. Like still water under a night sky. The universe no longer experiments. No new combinations arise. No unexpected reactions occur. Everything settles into what it already is. This stillness is not fragile. Nothing can disturb it easily. There is no excess energy to create chaos. Calm protects itself. The cosmos becomes steady. Like a deep breath held gently. Not strained. Not released. Just present. As you listen, let your body match this steadiness. You don't need to move. Without energy, distance loses meaning. Travel becomes irrelevant. Nothing needs to go anywhere. Everything already is where it belongs. Space feels endless but quiet. No signals cross it. No messages travel. It simply holds. What remains? Even light feels unnecessary. Seeing requires contrast. Contrast requires energy. In deep calm, nothing needs illumination. Darkness becomes the natural state. Not hiding. Not threatening. Just the universe resting. With its eyes closed. In this darkness, nothing feels missing. No expectation. No anticipation. Only presence. Without desire. Let your breathing remain slow and gentle. Darkness here is safe. Memory fades from the universe. Events are no longer marked. Changes are no longer recorded. Time flows. Without history. Without memory. There is no regret. Nothing compares past to present. Nothing longs for what was. Everything simply exists. The universe does not feel bored. Boredom requires awareness. The cosmos rests. Without thought or judgment. Existence becomes effortless. No decisions. No reactions. Just being. Across endless space. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would arrive at perfect neutrality. No excess. No lack. Only calm equilibrium. Stretching forever. Without energy, even extremes disappear. No hottest place. No coldest edge. Everything settles into gentle sameness. Sameness brings peace. When nothing stands out, nothing competes. Existence becomes, even in quiet. The universe no longer measures itself. No highs. No lows. Only steady presence. Without comparison. Comparison requires difference. Difference requires energy. Without energy, difference softens into balance. Balance becomes the universe's final language. Spoken without sound. Written without light. Held gently. In darkness. As you listen, feel your own thoughts growing even. Nothing needs to stand out. Nothing travels with urgency anymore. Particles drift lazily. Orbits remain wide. Paths never hurry toward conclusion. Speed loses importance. Fast and slow blend together. Motion becomes background, not focus. Time relaxes. The universe forgets momentum. Movement continues. But without direction. Without purpose. Without rush. Purpose dissolves gently. Not lost. Not removed. Simply no longer needed. For existence. The cosmos becomes complete without intention. Nothing aims. Nothing seeks. Everything rests. In quiet allowance. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. There is nothing to aim for. Even laws of physics feel softer. They still exist. They still hold. But nothing presses against them. Hard enough to notice. Structure remains without effort. Atoms stay atoms. Space stays space. Time continues. Without urgency. The universe no longer surprises itself. No sudden shifts. No unexpected outcomes. Only long, smooth continuity. Without interruption. Continuity feels like safety. When nothing can change quickly. Nothing needs guarding against. Everything feels secure. In its place. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel completely safe. No threats. No shocks. Only endless calm. Without disturbance, without energy, creation comes to rest. No new stars ignite. No new worlds form. The universe keeps what it already has. Holding without adding becomes natural. Nothing grows larger. Nothing shrinks suddenly. Everything remains as it settled. The universe no longer needs momentum. It does not push forward. It does not pull backward. It simply stays present. In calm balance. Presence replaces progress. There is no goal ahead. No future demanding arrival. Only existence. Resting in now. The cosmos grows timeless. Not frozen, but unconcerned with before or after. Moments blend into quiet continuity. As you listen, feel your thoughts slow. There is no future to chase here. Without energy, extremes vanish. No violent forces remain. No intense reactions occur. Everything moves within safe limits. Safety becomes universal. Nothing explodes. Nothing collapses. Nothing disrupts. The gentle order. Even uncertainty dissolves. When nothing can change quickly, nothing feels unstable. Existence becomes reliable and calm. The universe stops demanding attention. No flashes. No signals. No events asking to be noticed. Awareness, if it existed, could finally rest. Nothing to monitor. Nothing to anticipate. Nothing to prepare for. Let your breathing remain slow and easy. There is nothing to watch for. The universe becomes deeply quiet. Not empty. Not erased. Simply free from activity. Quiet stretches endlessly. No beginning. No conclusion. Just a continuous calm. Across space. Even motion feels optional. Objects drift if they must. Rest if they don't. Nothing insists on movement. Existence becomes effortless. No resistance. No friction. Only gentle continuation. Without effort. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would arrive at perfect ease. No striving. No tension. Only endless calm. Held softly in darkness. With no new energy, the universe would feel settled into maturity. Like a long story already told. Nothing rushes forward anymore. Everything rests in what it has become. Maturity brings steadiness. There is no urgency to grow. No need to transform. Existence holds itself. Without effort. Change becomes optional. If it happens, it happens slowly. If it doesn't, nothing is lost. The universe no longer seeks improvement. It does not optimize. It does not correct. It simply remains. As it is. Remaining becomes enough. Nothing demands progress. Nothing pushes forward. Everything settles into quiet presence. As you listen, let the idea of becoming soften. There is nothing you need to turn into. Without energy, effort disappears. No pushing. No pulling. No striving against resistance. Only gentle continuation. Effortlessness spreads everywhere. Motion requires no force. Rest requires no permission. Everything flows without resistance. The universe feels complete without motion. It does not miss activity. It does not crave events. Stillness feels natural and full. Even waiting loses meaning. Waiting implies expectation. Expectation implies change. In perfect calm, nothing waits. The cosmos exists without anticipation. No future pulls it forward. No past weighs it down. Only a wide, quiet present remains. Let your breathing remain slow and unforced. You don't need to anticipate anything. Without energy, time feels gentle. It does not press forward. It does not drag behind. It simply passes. Without demand. Moments blur softly together. Seconds feel like hours. Hours feel like nothing at all. Time becomes background, rather than focus. The universe does not track itself. No clocks. No markers. No milestones. Only ongoing existence. This lack of tracking brings ease. Nothing needs measuring. Nothing needs counting. Everything is allowed to simply be. If the universe stopped producing energy, time itself would feel restful. No deadlines. No schedules. Only endless calm. Moving gently forward. Without energy, the universe would feel deeply settled. Not paused. Not frozen. Simply comfortable. With no need to change. Comfort spreads across everything. Stars no longer strain to shine. Matter no longer shifts to react. Existence becomes easy to maintain. The universe stops reacting. Reaction requires energy. Without it, nothing responds urgently. Everything stays calm. Calm becomes the dominant condition. Not enforced. Not created. Just naturally present. Everywhere. In this calm, nothing feels missing. No lack. No hunger. No absence. Only quiet sufficiency. As you listen, feel that sufficiency within yourself. You already have enough. The universe no longer rushes toward outcomes. Outcomes require effort. Effort requires energy. In stillness, outcomes dissolve. Without outcomes, pressure fades. Nothing must succeed. Nothing must resolve. Existence remains unchallenged. Even complexity feels unnecessary. Simple structures persist. Simple laws remain. Nothing needs layering or refinement. Simplicity brings quiet strength. What remains is stable. What remains is balanced. Nothing fragile survives. This calm, the universe becomes elegantly simple. Few interactions. Few changes. Endless continuity. Without strain. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Simplicity is easy to rest within. Without energy, distance becomes irrelevant. Nothing travels. Nothing arrives. Space holds everything. Without movement, holding replaces motion. The universe does not push outward. It does not pull inward. It simply contains what already exists. Containment feels gentle. Nothing is trapped. Nothing is confined. Everything rests where it naturally belongs. The universe feels complete within itself. No additions needed. No removals required. Existence is self-sustaining. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would become a place of deep acceptance. Nothing to improve. Nothing to fix. Only endless calm. Held softly in space. Without new energy, the universe grows very quiet inside itself. There is no internal rush. No hidden activity waiting to emerge. Everything rests. Without tension. Rest becomes the default condition. Nothing needs to power down. Nothing needs permission to stop. Stillness is simply how things are. The universe no longer anticipates change. Anticipation requires motion. Motion requires energy. In deep calm, nothing is anticipated. Calm removes urgency. When nothing can suddenly happen, nothing feels threatened. Existence becomes predictably peaceful. This peace does not fade. It does not require maintenance. It does not depend on balance. It simply remains unchanging. As you listen, feel your shoulders soften again. Nothing needs your attention. Vignette 186. Without energy, even randomness disappears. Randomness needs movement. Movement needs fuel. In stillness, patterns no longer shift. The universe becomes steady everywhere at once. Not ordered. Not chaotic. Just evenly calm. Across all space. Nothing interrupts this steadiness. No noise. No signal. No fluctuation. Only quiet continuation. Existence stops feeling temporary. Without change, nothing feels like it's passing. Everything feels permanent. The universe rests beyond concern. No danger. No safety. Just presence. Without judgment. Let your breathing remain slow and effortless. Concern is not needed here. Without energy, even beginnings lose meaning. Beginnings imply motion. Motion implies change. In full calm, nothing begins. Endings lose meaning too. Nothing finishes. Nothing concludes. Existence simply continues. The universe exists outside narrative. No story arc. No climax. No resolution. Only being. This absence of story brings ease. Nothing must make sense. Nothing must connect. Everything is allowed to simply exist. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel endless and complete. No progress. No decline. Only calm presence. Stretching forever. Without energy, the universe no longer reacts to itself. Nothing triggers anything else. No chain reactions unfold. Existence becomes self-contained and calm. Cause and effect grow quiet. Causes no longer arise. Effects no longer follow. Everything rests. Without consequence. The universe stops responding. No adjustments are needed. No corrections are required. Everything remains as it is. Responsiveness fades into neutrality. Nothing pulls attention. Nothing demands reaction. Presence stands alone. Without movement, the cosmos becomes internally still. No internal pressure. No internal motion. Just quiet existence, holding itself together. As you listen, let any need to respond dissolve. You don't have to react to anything. Without energy, even contrast disappears. Bright and dark no longer differ. Warm and cold no longer matter. Everything settles into gentle sameness. Sameness feels soothing. Nothing stands out. Nothing competes. Everything blends into calm balance. The universe no longer highlights anything. No focal points. No centers of attention. All regions feel equal and quiet. Equality brings deep peace. When nothing is emphasized, nothing feels urgent. Existence becomes even and stable. The universe rests in uniform calm. No peaks. No valleys. Just steady presence. Everywhere. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Uniform calm is easy to rest within. Without energy, direction loses meaning. No forward. No backward. No preferred path. Just being. Movement no longer implies progress. Progress requires change. Change requires energy. In stillness, direction fades away. The universe exists without aim. Nothing is headed anywhere. Nothing needs to arrive. Everything already is where it belongs. Aimlessness feels gentle. No striving. No searching. Only quiet presence. Without destination. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel directionless in the best way. No goals. No paths. Only endless calm. Without movement. Without energy, the universe becomes very quiet inside motion. Objects still exist. Space still stretches. But nothing urges anything else to change. Existence no longer feels active. It feels settled. Resolved. Complete in its stillness. Without needing to move. The universe does not resist this calm. There is no struggle. No friction. Only a gentle agreement. To remain as is. Remaining becomes the natural state. Nothing needs continuation. Nothing needs ending. Everything simply stays. The cosmos rests without effort. No maintenance. No correction. No supervision. Just quiet balance. As you listen, feel your breathing soften even more. Remaining is easy. Without energy, transformation slows to stillness. Matter holds its form. Space holds its shape. Time holds its flow. Without change, nothing pushes transformation forward. No catalyst. No reaction. No spark. Only calm persistence. The universe becomes content with what it is. No dissatisfaction. No desire. No restlessness. Only acceptance. Acceptance spreads everywhere at once. From the smallest particle to the widest space. Nothing resists the moment. The universe feels whole. Not improved. Not perfected. Simply complete. As it stands. Let your shoulders drop again. Wholeness requires no effort. Without energy, motion loses importance. Movement happens only if it must. Rest happens naturally. Nothing insists on either. The universe does not favor action over rest. Both are equal. Both are allowed. Neither demands attention. Choice disappears. Nothing chooses to move. Nothing chooses to stop. Existence unfolds. Without decision. This absence of choice brings peace. No right direction. No wrong path. Only quiet presence. Without judgment. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would exist without decision. No effort. No intention. Only calm being. Stretching endlessly. Without energy, the universe becomes deeply patient. Nothing is waiting to happen. Nothing is delayed. Everything rests. Without expectation. Patience no longer feels like effort. It isn't practiced. It isn't maintained. It simply exists. As the natural state. The universe stops preparing for anything. Preparation requires change. Change requires energy. In stillness, preparation fades away. Nothing anticipates the future. The future no longer pulls. The past no longer weighs. Only the present remains wide and quiet. The cosmos exists without tension. No stretching. No compressing. Just calm balance. Everywhere. As you listen, feel any remaining tension ease. There is nothing to prepare for. Without energy, even possibility softens. Possibility implies change. Change implies motion. In stillness, possibility rests. The universe no longer holds potential. It holds presence. What is enough. Nothing waits to become something else. Atoms remain atoms. Space remains space. Time remains time. Everything is settled. This settlement feels gentle. No loss. No gain. Just quiet stability. Without contrast. The universe rests inside itself. Contained. Complete. Undisturbed. Calm. Let your breathing remain slow and effortless. Containment here feels safe. Without energy, nothing competes for existence. There is no survival. No dominance. No urgency. Only coexistence. Coexistence becomes effortless. Nothing needs more space. Nothing needs less. Everything occupies exactly where it is. The universe no longer favors outcomes. There is no best result. No worst case. Only what remains. Peacefully. Peace spreads without resistance. Nothing pushes against it. Nothing disrupts it. Calm sustains itself. Naturally. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel endlessly patient. No waiting. No rushing. Only calm presence. Stretching gently through time. Without energy, the universe no longer carries momentum. Nothing builds speed. Nothing slows dramatically. Movement exists only as a memory of motion long ago. Momentum gently dissolves. Paths smooth out. Trajectories widen. Everything drifts. Without insistence. The universe no longer leans toward change. There is no forward push. No backward pull. Only balance. Holding everything steady. Balance becomes invisible. Nothing tips. Nothing wobbles. Stability feels so natural. It goes unnoticed. Existence no longer feels temporary. Without change, there is no countdown. Nothing feels like it's passing. As you listen, feel your awareness soften. Nothing is slipping away. Without energy, beginnings stop forming. No spark ignites. No process starts. What exists is all there is. This completeness feels calm. No anticipation. No preparation. Only quiet sufficiency. In what already exists. The universe does not miss creation. Missing requires desire. Desire requires movement. In stillness, nothing is missing. Existence becomes self-sustaining. No fuel required. No renewal needed. Everything remains. By simply being. The cosmos rests without maintenance. No systems to manage. No processes to monitor. Only steady presence. Without effort. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Nothing needs to be maintained. Without energy, even contrast fades. Edges blur. Differences soften. Everything blends into gentle uniformity. Uniformity feels peaceful. Nothing stands out. Nothing competes. Everything shares the same quiet state. The universe no longer distinguishes importance. No center. No edge. All regions feel equal and calm. Equality brings ease. Nothing needs protecting. Nothing needs prioritizing. Everything is allowed to simply remain. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel evenly calm everywhere. No peaks. No valleys. Only smooth presence. Stretching endlessly. Without energy, the universe becomes effortless to inhabit. Nothing demands adjustment. Nothing requires response. Existence flows without friction. Friction fades everywhere. No collisions feel sharp. No interactions feel strained. Everything touches gently. Or not at all. The universe no longer resists itself. No forces push against forces. No systems struggle to balance. Everything agrees to remain as it is. Agreement brings ease. Nothing argues for change. Nothing argues for motion. Calm sustains itself naturally. The cosmos settles into harmony. Not a performed harmony. Not a designed one. Simply a quiet alignment that lasts. As you listen, feel your body releasing effort. Nothing here requires resistance. Without energy, the universe stops expressing urgency. No moments rush forward. No outcomes approach quickly. Time becomes wide and unpressured. Unpressured time feels spacious. Moments stretch gently. Seconds dissolve into calm. Awareness relaxes without countdowns. The universe does not hurry toward silence. It arrives there gradually, softly, without intention, without force. Silence becomes the default sound. No background hum. No cosmic noise. Only quiet presence. Everywhere. The universe rests inside that silence. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing competes with it. Silence holds everything gently. Let your breathing slow even more. Silence is safe here. Without energy, awareness would have nothing to track. No signals. No changes. No events to follow. Tracking fades into still awareness. No focus required. No attention pulled outward. Presence becomes soft and wide. The universe no longer asks to be observed. Nothing reveals itself. Nothing hides. Everything simply exists without display. Existence becomes quiet completeness. No explanation needed. No witness required. Being alone is enough. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would rest in effortless silence. No effort. No motion. Only calm presence. Stretching endlessly through space. Without energy, the universe feels deeply spacious inside itself. Space does not rush to fill. Distances remain open. Nothing crowds anything else. Everything has room to rest. Spaciousness reduces pressure. Nothing presses inward. Nothing expands outward. Balance holds. Without effort, the universe becomes wide and gentle. Not stretched thin. Not compressed tight. Simply open. Holding everything softly. In this openness, nothing collides. Encounters become rare. Paths remain separate. Silence fills the space between everything. The cosmos rests inside its own vastness. Wide. Quiet. Unhurried. Peaceful. As you listen, feel space opening around you. Nothing is closing in. Without energy, even repetition fades. Patterns stop cycling. Rhythms slow beyond notice. Nothing loops endlessly. Everything settles. Settling feels final in a gentle way. Not an ending. Not a conclusion. Just a state. That does not change. The universe stops counting itself. No cycles. No phases. No returns. Only presence. Presence does not repeat. It simply remains. Unbroken. Unmarked. Always now. The universe exists as one long moment. No before. No after. Only calm being. Without division. Let your breathing slow even further. Time does not need attention. Without energy, even distance feels soft. Far and near lose meaning. Separation becomes gentle. Everything feels equally. Far and close. The universe does not measure itself. No scales. No comparisons. Only existence. Without judgment. Judgment requires contrast. Contrast requires energy. Without energy, everything is allowed to simply be. Allowance feels like peace. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is favored. All that exists is welcomed equally. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel endlessly spacious. No crowding. No pressure. Only wide, quiet calm. Stretching without limit. Without energy, the universe feels settled into deep quiet. Nothing hums beneath the surface. Nothing waits to awaken. Stillness is complete. Not temporary. This quiet has no layers. No hidden motion. No distant vibration. Silence fills space. Evenly and gently. The universe no longer holds surprises. Surprises require change. Change requires energy. In stillness, nothing emerges unexpectedly. Predictability becomes absolute. Every moment feels like the last. Not repetitive. Just continuous. Without interruption. The cosmos relaxes into certainty. Nothing can suddenly happen. Nothing needs guarding against. Existence feels safe. By default. As you listen, let that sense of safety settle in. Nothing is about to change. Without energy, even extremes dissolve. No violent forces remain. No sudden releases occur. Everything exists within gentle limits. Limits feel comforting. They create stability. They prevent chaos. They allow rest. Without vigilance, the universe no longer strains at boundaries. Space does not stretch urgently. Matter does not compress tightly. Everything holds its shape. Without effort, holding becomes natural. No tension in maintaining form. No fear of collapse. Just quiet persistence. Across time, the cosmos exists without risk. Nothing escalates. Nothing spirals. Everything remains calm and contained. Let your breathing remain slow and easy. There is no risk here. Without energy, even identity softens. Objects are no longer defined by what they do, but simply by being present. Function fades into existence. Nothing has a role to perform. Nothing needs purpose. Presence alone is enough. The universe does not assign meaning. Meaning implies interpretation. Interpretation implies change. In stillness, meaning rests. Resting meaning feels peaceful. Nothing needs explanation. Nothing needs context. Everything exists without narrative. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel utterly calm. No drama. No tension. Only quiet being, stretching endlessly into rest. Without energy, the universe feels settled into acceptance. Nothing resists its condition. Nothing tries to escape it. Existence rests without objection. Acceptance removes effort. There is no struggle against what is. No attempt to alter conditions. Everything simply remains as it has become. The universe no longer negotiates with change. Change requires motion. Motion requires energy. In stillness, negotiation ends. This stillness is stable. Nothing trembles beneath it. Nothing waits to break free. Calm holds itself without reinforcement. The cosmos rests in quiet agreement. Space, matter, and time all settle together. As you listen, let any inner resistance soften. Nothing needs to be different. Without energy, the universe feels internally smooth. No sharp transitions. No sudden shifts. Everything blends into one continuous state. Smoothness replaces contrast. Edges blur gently. Boundaries soften. Separation feels less defined. The universe no longer distinguishes moments. No moment stands out. No event interrupts. Time flows without punctuation. Flow becomes barely noticeable. Change slows beyond awareness. Movement fades into background. Presence remains soft and constant. The universe exists as uninterrupted calm. No chapters. No transitions. Just one long, quiet state. Let your breathing stay slow and even. Nothing here has edges. Without energy, even expectation dissolves. Expectation implies arrival. Arrival implies motion. In stillness, nothing approaches. Nothing waits to happen. No future presses forward. No outcome prepares itself. Existence remains complete now. Completion feels gentle. Not final. Not dramatic. Just whole. Without needing addition. The universe does not anticipate itself. It does not look ahead. It does not look back. It simply remains present. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel quietly complete. No anticipation. No expectation. Only calm presence. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply unhurried. Nothing is late. Nothing is early. Everything arrives. By simply being present. Unhurried time feels spacious. Moments do not stack. They spread gently apart. Awareness relaxes. Without pressure. The universe no longer rushes toward silence. Silence is already here. It does not need to be reached. It simply surrounds everything. This surrounding silence is stable. No sounds fade into it. No noises interrupt it. Quiet holds. Without effort. The cosmos rests inside this quiet. Like a lake at night. Unmoving. Undisturbed. Calm to the core. As you listen, let your thoughts slow again. There is nothing to hurry toward. Without energy, even curiosity softens. Questions do not press forward. Answers are not required. Wonder rests. Without urgency. Curiosity becomes gentle awareness. Not searching. Not seeking. Simply noticing. What already is. The universe does not demand understanding. It does not explain itself. It does not reveal secrets. It remains quietly sufficient. Sufficiency brings peace. Nothing feels unresolved. Nothing feels incomplete. Everything exists as enough. The universe feels content. Not satisfied. Not pleased. Just settled. Without desire. Let your breathing remain slow and natural. Contentment requires nothing. Without energy, nothing calls for attention. No signals flash. No events announce themselves. Awareness can rest. Without scanning. Scanning fades into stillness. No need to look ahead. No need to watch behind. Presence remains. Soft and open. The universe does not spotlight anything. No center stage. No background. Everything shares the same quiet space. Equality feels calming. Nothing competes. Nothing dominates. Everything coexists. Without tension. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel effortlessly calm. No alerts. No demands. Only quiet presence. Resting everywhere at once. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into quiet awareness. Nothing pulls attention outward. Nothing competes for notice. Awareness rests. Without effort. Attention no longer jumps. There are no signals to follow. No events to track. Focus softens into calm presence. The universe does not distract itself. No sudden changes appear. No interruptions arise. Existence remains steady and gentle. Gentleness becomes the dominant quality. Nothing presses forward. Nothing resists backward. Everything holds a soft balance. The cosmos exists without stimulation. No bursts of activity. No dramatic shifts. Only continuous calm. Across space. As you listen, feel your mind resting more deeply. Nothing needs your focus. Without energy, even complexity fades away. Layers simplify. Systems quiet. What remains is simple. Stable existence. Simplicity feels soothing. No calculations. No decisions. Just being. Without effort. The universe no longer organizes itself. Organization requires movement. Movement requires energy. In stillness, organization dissolves. What remains does not need order. Nothing competes. Nothing collides. Everything coexists. Peacefully. The universe becomes effortlessly simple. Few distinctions. Few interactions. Endless calm. Without structure. Let your breathing stay slow and even. Simplicity is easy to rest within. Without energy, even awareness feels optional. Nothing demands noticing. Nothing asks to be seen. Presence can fade into rest. Rest does not mean absence. Existence continues. It simply does not announce itself. Everything remains quietly present. The universe does not seek witnesses. It does not require observation. It does not depend on awareness. It exists regardless. This independence feels peaceful. Nothing needs confirmation. Nothing needs acknowledgement. Existence stands on its own. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would exist without needing to be noticed. No attention required. No observation needed. Only calm being. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply at ease with itself. Nothing struggles to persist. Nothing strains to exist. Everything rests. Without effort, ease becomes universal. No part of space feels tense. No region feels unstable. Calm spreads evenly across all existence. The universe no longer feels dynamic. Dynamics require motion. Motion requires energy. In stillness, everything settles. Settling feels natural. Not like stopping. Not like failing. Just like arriving at rest. The cosmos exists without internal noise. No background activity. No hidden turbulence. Only quiet presence. Everywhere. As you listen, feel your body sinking slightly deeper. There is nothing to brace against. Without energy, even variation softens. Differences blur. Edges fade. Everything feels even and smooth. Smoothness brings comfort. No sharp contrasts. No sudden shifts. Only gradual sameness. Without tension. The universe does not highlight moments. Nothing stands out. Nothing fades away. All moments feel equally calm. Calm moments do not compete. There is no hierarchy. No importance. Everything shares the same quiet value. The universe rests without emphasis. Nothing is foreground. Nothing is background. Everything simply exists. Together. Let your breathing remain slow and gentle. Nothing needs to stand out. Without energy, even boundaries soften. Inside and outside blur. Near and far lose meaning. Space feels continuous and open. Continuity feels peaceful. No separations to cross. No divisions to manage. Existence flows as one quiet whole. The universe no longer fragments itself. No regions compete. No zones differ. Everything rests in shared stillness. Shared stillness creates harmony. Nothing dominates. Nothing resists. Everything agrees to remain calm. If the universe stopped producing energy, it would feel seamlessly whole. No borders. No divisions. Only endless calm. Resting gently everywhere. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into silence. Not a silence that arrives. A silence that has always been there. Everything simply rests within it. This silence does not echo. There is nothing to bounce back. Nothing to return. Quiet exists. Without reflection. The universe no longer carries internal noise. No vibrations beneath matter. No hum beneath space. Stillness fills everything. Completely. Stillness feels permanent. Not temporary. Not fragile. Just steady calm. That does not fade. The cosmos no longer shifts its weight. Nothing leans. Nothing balances precariously. Everything rests exactly where it belongs. As you listen, feel yourself settling too. There is nowhere to shift. Without energy, even motion becomes memory. Paths once traveled remain faintly traced, but nothing moves along them anymore. Memory does not disturb rest. It does not replay. It does not repeat. It simply lies quietly beneath existence. The universe does not revisit itself. No cycles return. No phases repeat. Everything stays as it is. Staying becomes effortless. No holding required. No resistance needed. Existence remains without strain. The cosmos rests without interruption. No signals pass through. No waves travel across space. Quiet remains. Unbroken. Let your breathing remain slow and gentle. Nothing interrupts this calm. Without energy, the universe feels deeply secure. Nothing threatens change. Nothing destabilizes balance. Existence feels safe by nature. Safety does not require protection. There is nothing to guard against. Nothing approaching. Calm maintains itself naturally. The universe no longer prepares for events. Events no longer form. Possibilities no longer branch. Everything remains singular and quiet. Singularity feels peaceful. No choices. No forks in the path. Only one calm state. Stretching endlessly. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel deeply secure. No threats. No surprises. Only endless calm. Resting gently in silence. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into certainty. Nothing questions what is. Nothing wonders what comes next. Existence feels resolved. Certainty removes hesitation. There is no pause before action. Because there is no action at all. Everything simply remains as it is. The universe no longer weighs possibilities. Possibilities imply movement. Movement implies energy. In stillness, possibility rests. Resting possibility feels calm. Nothing could become more. Nothing could become less. Everything is already complete. The cosmos exists without tension between states. No transition from one phase to another. No pressure to evolve. Only stable presence. Without change. As you listen, let any remaining anticipation fade. Nothing is waiting to happen. Without energy, even cause and effect soften. Events no longer trigger outcomes. Actions no longer ripple forward. Everything rests. Without consequence. Consequence fades into neutrality. Nothing leads to something else. Nothing follows from before. Existence becomes self-contained. The universe does not respond anymore. No feedback. No adjustment. Only quiet continuation. Without reaction. Non-response feels peaceful. Nothing escalates. Nothing resolves. Everything simply stays calm. The cosmos rests without urgency. No alarms. No signals. No sudden changes to monitor. Let your breathing remain slow and effortless. There is nothing to respond to. Without energy, even direction loses relevance. No forward. No backward. No toward or away. Only being. Being does not require navigation. There is nowhere to go. Nothing to avoid. Everything exists where it already is. The universe feels directionless in a gentle way. Not lost. Not confused. Simply unconcerned. With movement. Unconcerned existence feels light. No burden of choice. No need to decide. Presence remains. Soft and open. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel completely unburdened. No direction. No obligation. Only endless calm. Resting quietly. Without energy, the universe feels softly unoccupied. Nothing waits to be filled. Nothing feels empty. Space simply exists. Without expectation. Non-occupational feels peaceful. There is no vacancy. There is no crowding. Everything has room to rest. The universe no longer feels busy. No processes run in the background. No systems churn quietly. All activity has settled. Settled activity becomes silence. Not silence after noise. Not silence before sound. Just silence. As the natural state. The cosmos feels free from obligation. Nothing must continue. Nothing must conclude. Existence simply remains. Without duty. As you listen, feel any sense of obligation loosen. Nothing is required of you. Without energy, even complexity forgets itself. No layered systems persist. No intricate balances remain active. Everything simplifies into calm presence. Simplicity feels weightless. No structures strain to hold together. No parts depend on others. Everything exists on its own. The universe no longer maintains itself. Maintenance requires effort. Effort requires energy. In stillness, maintenance fades. What remains needs no upkeep. No corrections. No tuning. No oversight. Only being. The cosmos rests without management. Nothing supervises it. Nothing adjusts it. Everything remains exactly as it is. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Nothing here needs managing. Without energy, even memory grows quiet. No echoes repeat. No impressions replay. The past rests undisturbed. Resting memory does not intrude. It does not surface. It does not demand recall. It simply exists. Silently. The universe no longer reflects on itself. No self-reference. No comparison. Only present existence. Without thought. This lack of reflection feels peaceful. Nothing evaluates. Nothing reviews. Everything is allowed to simply be. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel completely unoccupied. No duties. No processes. Only calm presence. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels softly finished. Not ended. Not closed. Simply complete. With nothing left to do. Completion brings ease. No loose ends remain. No threads need tying. Everything rests. As a whole, the universe no longer leans into the future. There is no pull forward. No expectation ahead. Only presence. Without direction. Presence becomes wide and gentle. Nothing presses against it. Nothing escapes it. It holds everything. Without effort. The cosmos exists without anticipation. No waiting. No arrival. Only being. Steady and calm. As you listen, feel any sense of later dissolve. There is only now. Without energy, even motion becomes unnecessary. Nothing must move to remain real. Nothing must change to exist. Stillness feels complete. Stillness does not feel empty. It feels full. Sufficient. Quietly alive. Without activity. The universe no longer measures itself. No metrics. No scales. No comparisons. Only presence. Measurement fades into acceptance. Nothing needs quantifying. Nothing needs proof. Existence stands on its own. The cosmos rests without evaluation. No success. No failure. Only being. Unchanged. Let your breathing remain slow and easy. Nothing here is being measured. Without energy, even separation feels gentle. Boundaries soften. Distances blur. Everything feels quietly connected. Connection does not require interaction. Things are near. Without touching. Together. Without effort. The universe no longer defines parts. No systems. No components. Just one calm field of existence. Unity feels peaceful. Nothing stands alone. Nothing merges forcefully. Everything simply is. Together. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel softly complete. No unfinished moments. No pending change. Only calm presence. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into unity. Nothing separates itself. Nothing stands apart. Everything rests within one quiet whole. Unity does not erase individuality. Things still exist. They simply no longer compete. Difference softens into harmony. The universe no longer divides attention. Nothing pulls focus. Nothing demands priority. Awareness remains wide and calm. Calm awareness feels gentle. It does not sharpen. It does not narrow. It simply holds everything evenly. The cosmos exists without hierarchy. No higher states. No lower states. Everything shares the same quiet level. As you listen, feel any sense of comparison fade. Nothing is above or below you. Without energy, even edges soften. Boundaries lose sharpness. Transitions blur. Everything feels smoothly connected. Connection does not require effort. Nothing reaches outward. Nothing pulls inward. Existence remains gently together. The universe stops organizing itself. Organization implies movement. Movement implies energy. In stillness, structure rests. What remains does not need structure. Nothing collapses. Nothing scatters. Everything holds naturally. The cosmos rests in effortless cohesion. No glue. No force. Just calm presence. Holding everything. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Cohesion here feels safe. Without energy, even separation loses meaning. Near and far dissolve. Inside and outside soften. Everything exists. Without distance, distance becomes a memory. Paths once stretched long. Now they rest. Nothing needs to travel between points. The universe no longer bridges gaps. There are no gaps to cross. No divides to close. Everything already rests. Together. Togetherness feels quiet. Not crowded. Not merged. Just calmly shared. Existence. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel gently unified. No separations. No divisions. Only calm presence. Resting everywhere at once. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into softness. Nothing feels rigid. Nothing feels sharp. Everything rests with gentle edges. Softness spreads through all space. Forces no longer press hard. Structures no longer strain. Existence feels kind to itself. The universe no longer tightens around anything. No compression. No tension. Everything remains lightly held. Lightness replaces pressure. Nothing bears weight. Nothing resists gravity. All things exist without heaviness. The cosmos feels easy to be within. No sharp boundaries. No difficult transitions. Just smooth presence. Everywhere. As you listen, feel your body growing lighter. Nothing is weighing you down. Without energy, the universe releases effort entirely. No sustaining. No maintaining. Existence continues. Without work, work becomes unnecessary. Nothing must be powered. Nothing must be supported. Everything remains. By simply existing, the universe no longer labors. No cycles run. No engines turn. Everything rests naturally. Rest feels permanent. Not earned. Not temporary. Just the natural state of all things. The cosmos exists without exhaustion. Nothing gets tired. Nothing needs recovery. Everything remains gently present. Let your breathing slow even more. You don't need to recover from anything. Without energy, even tension dissolves completely. No pull. No push. Only balance. Without strain, Balance no longer needs correction. Nothing tips. Nothing falls. Everything stays perfectly steady. The universe rests in perfect equilibrium. Not adjusted. Not maintained. Simply present. Without imbalance. Equilibrium feels peaceful. Nothing competes. Nothing disrupts. Everything remains calm and equal. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel endlessly gentle. No strain. No effort. Only soft calm. Resting quietly everywhere. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into quiet harmony. Nothing clashes. Nothing conflicts. Everything rests in gentle agreement. Harmony does not require coordination. No parts must align. No rhythms must match. Everything naturally shares the same calm state. The universe no longer adjusts itself. Adjustments imply imbalance. Imbalance implies motion. In stillness, adjustment fades. What remains feels naturally aligned. No corrections needed. No fine-tuning required. Existence holds without effort. The cosmos rests without recalibration. No cycles restart. No systems reset. Everything remains softly consistent. As you listen, feel any need to fix things dissolve. Nothing needs fixing. Without energy, even contrast becomes gentle. Differences remain, but they no longer compete. Everything coexists peacefully. Peace spreads without intention. It is not enforced. It is not created. It simply exists. Everywhere. The universe feels emotionally neutral. No excitement. No distress. Just calm presence. Without intensity. Neutrality feels restful. Nothing pulls upward. Nothing sinks downward. Everything remains even and steady. The cosmos exists without emotional charge. Nothing reacts strongly. Nothing amplifies. Everything stays soft and quiet. Let your breathing remain slow and even. Nothing here carries intensity. Without energy, even disturbance becomes impossible. No waves rise. No ripples spread. Stillness remains unbroken. Unbroken stillness feels safe. Nothing intrudes. Nothing interrupts. Calm continues without threat. The universe no longer absorbs shocks. Shocks require force. Force requires energy. In stillness, nothing strikes. Nothing startles existence. No sudden change. No abrupt shift. Everything remains predictably calm. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel deeply harmonious. No disturbance. No reaction. Only calm balance. Resting gently forever. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into quiet stability. Nothing shakes. Nothing trembles. Everything rests without vibration. Stability becomes effortless. No balancing acts. No corrections. Existence holds itself naturally. The universe no longer oscillates. No swings between states. No cycles of rise and fall. Everything remains even and still. Evenness feels comforting. Nothing spikes. Nothing drops away. Calm stretches smoothly across time. The cosmos exists without fluctuation. No pulses. No waves. Only steady presence. Without motion. As you listen, feel your body resting more fully. Nothing inside you needs to fluctuate. Without energy, the universe feels deeply grounded. Nothing floats away. Nothing collapses inward. Everything stays exactly where it belongs. Groundedness brings ease. No fear of drifting. No fear of falling. Existence remains secure. The universe no longer needs anchoring. Anchors imply movement. Movement implies energy. In stillness, anchoring fades. What remains is naturally steady. No supports required. No foundations needed. Everything stands without effort. The cosmos rests without instability. No tipping points. No thresholds. Only calm presence. Everywhere. Let your breathing remain slow and gentle. You are supported here. Without energy, even vibration becomes memory. Oscillations once existed. Now they rest. Nothing hums. Nothing resonates. Memory does not disturb calm. It does not replay. It does not echo. It simply lies quietly beneath existence. The universe no longer resonates. No frequencies travel. No tones persist. Silence remains. Complete. Complete silence feels gentle. Not empty. Not heavy. Just quietly full of calm. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel deeply stable. No shaking. No drifting. Only steady calm. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into still awareness. Nothing scans the horizon. Nothing checks for change. Presence remains soft and unmoving. Awareness no longer sharpens. There is nothing to notice urgently. Nothing to track or follow. Attention relaxes into rest. The universe does not monitor itself. No feedback loops persist. No internal signals circulate. Existence simply continues without observation. Unobserved existence feels peaceful. Nothing performs. Nothing reacts. Everything rests without witness. The cosmos exists without alertness. No vigilance required. No watchfulness needed. Calm remains undisturbed. As you listen, let your own alertness soften. You don't need to stay awake for anything. Without energy, even awareness fades gently. Not into absence. Not into sleep. Just into quiet being. Without focus. Focus dissolves into openness. Nothing narrows attention. Nothing pulls it tight. Presence becomes wide and gentle. The universe no longer distinguishes foreground from background. Nothing stands forward. Nothing recedes. Everything shares the same calm depth. Depth feels endless. Not deep in layers. Not shallow in places. Just quietly vast. Everywhere. The cosmos rests without perspective. No point of view. No angle. Existence simply is. Without orientation. Let your breathing remain slow and easy. There is no need to focus on anything. Without energy, even consciousness feels optional. Nothing demands awareness. Nothing calls for attention. Being continues. Without noticing. Noticing is no longer required. Existence does not depend on it. Nothing changes if it fades. Everything remains. Quietly present. The universe exists beyond observation. Seen or unseen. It remains the same. Calm holds. Without condition. This independence feels restful. Nothing relies on awareness. Nothing waits to be perceived. Everything is allowed to simply be. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel gently unnoticed. No attention required. No awareness demanded. Only calm being. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into quiet existence. Nothing announces itself. Nothing fades away. Everything simply remains. Without signal. Existence no longer broadcasts. No messages travel. No information spreads. Silence holds. Everything evenly. The universe does not communicate. Communication requires change. Change requires energy. In stillness, nothing needs to be said. Non-speaking existence feels calm. Nothing explains itself. Nothing responds. Everything rests. Without dialogue. The cosmos exists without expression. No signals. No output. Only quiet presence. Without display. As you listen, feel the need to respond dissolve. There is nothing asking for an answer. Without energy, even identity becomes gentle. Nothing defines itself by action. Nothing proves its existence. Being alone is enough. Identity softens into presence. No labels needed. No roles required. Everything exists. Without definition. The universe does not perform. No behaviors repeat. No patterns express themselves. Everything rests. Without showing. Rest does not erase existence. It simply removes effort. Everything remains. Without display. The cosmos exists quietly within itself. No reflection outward. No expression inward. Just calm presence. Without activity. Let your breathing remain slow and natural. Nothing needs to be expressed. Without energy, the universe feels deeply internal. Nothing extends outward. Nothing projects itself. Existence turns inward. And rests. Inwardness feels safe. Nothing intrudes. Nothing interrupts. Calm holds. Everything gently. The universe does not reach beyond itself. No expansion. No exploration. Everything stays where it is. Staying feels peaceful. No journeys needed. No destinations waiting. Existence remains complete. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel deeply quiet inside itself. No expression. No motion. Only calm presence. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into inward quiet. Nothing reaches outward. Nothing signals beyond itself. Everything rests within its own calm. Inward quiet feels complete. No need to expand. No need to explore. Existence is already where it belongs. The universe no longer sends information. No light travels. No waves carry messages. Silence becomes the shared language. This silence does not isolate. Nothing feels alone. Nothing feels distant. Everything rests together in stillness. The cosmos exists without outreach. No connection attempts. No exchanges. Only calm presence. Remaining steady. As you listen, feel yourself turning inward too. There is nothing outside you need to reach. Without energy, the universe feels deeply self-contained. Nothing enters. Nothing leaves. Existence holds itself gently. Self-containment feels peaceful. No vulnerability. No exposure. Everything rests securely. The universe no longer reacts to external influence. There is nothing external. Everything is already included. Calm remains. Undisturbed. Inclusion feels natural. Nothing is excluded. Nothing is added. Everything simply is. As it is. The cosmos rests without permeability. No boundaries to cross. No edges to pass. Existence remains whole. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Wholeness feels safe here. Without energy, even interaction fades away. Nothing touches. Nothing collides. Everything rests. Without exchange. Exchange is no longer needed. Nothing transfers. Nothing responds. Calm sustains itself naturally. The universe feels deeply uninterrupted. No interruptions arise. No changes intrude. Everything continues smoothly. Smooth continuation feels restful. No bumps. No pauses. Just gentle presence. Without edges. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel completely inward and whole. No signals. No exchanges. Only calm presence. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels deeply settled into still completeness. Nothing waits to unfold. Nothing hides potential. Everything rests fully formed. Completeness removes urgency. There is no rush to arrive. No pressure to become. Existence remains finished and calm. The universe no longer leans toward possibility. Possibility implies motion. Motion implies energy. In stillness, possibility rests. Resting possibility feels peaceful. Nothing hopes. Nothing fears. Everything simply exists as enough. The cosmos feels deeply settled into already. Already complete. Already present. Already calm. Already whole. As you listen, let the idea of what's next fade. There is only now. Without energy, even expansion becomes unnecessary. Space does not stretch. Time does not rush. Everything stays where it is. Staying feels gentle. No resistance. No confinement. Just natural rest. In place. The universe no longer seeks distance or closeness. Far and near lose meaning. Separation softens. Everything feels equally present. Presence spreads evenly. No center. No edge. just calm being. Everywhere. The cosmos exists without spatial urgency. Nothing moves closer. Nothing drifts away. Existence holds. Steady. Let your breathing remain slow and easy. There is nowhere you need to go. Without energy, even becoming feels unnecessary. Nothing evolves. Nothing transforms. Everything remains. As it is. Remaining feels peaceful. No effort to maintain. No fear of loss. Only quiet continuation. Without strain. The universe rests beyond change. Not frozen. Not stopped. Simply unconcerned. With transformation. Unconcerned existence feels light. Nothing weighs on it. Nothing presses forward. Everything rests. Without burden. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel fully settled. No becoming. No arriving. Only calm presence. Resting endlessly. Without energy, the universe feels fully settled into silence. Not silence after sound. Not silence before noise. Just silence. As the natural state. This silence does not feel empty. It feels full. Complete. Holding everything gently. Without motion. The universe no longer reacts to anything. Nothing approaches. Nothing departs. Existence remains. Unchanged. Unchanging feels safe. Nothing surprises. Nothing startles. Everything stays. As it is. The cosmos rests without effort. No maintenance. No correction. No adjustment. Only being. As you listen, feel your body fully supported. Nothing here can shift beneath you. Without energy, even the idea of movement fades. Nothing travels. Nothing flows. Everything rests. In place. Resting does not feel stuck. It feels complete. Finished. Exactly where it should be. The universe no longer waits. Waiting implies expectation. Expectation implies change. In stillness. Nothing waits. Nothing arrives late. Nothing arrives early. Everything already exists. Fully present. The cosmos exists without urgency. No clocks. No schedules. Only calm presence. Now. Let your breathing slow to its most natural rhythm. There is nothing else to arrive. Without energy, the universe feels complete beyond improvement. Nothing needs refining. Nothing needs evolving. Everything already rests. As whole. Completion feels gentle. Not dramatic. Not final. Just deeply settled. And calm. The universe no longer unfolds. Nothing opens. Nothing closes. Existence simply remains. Remaining feels endless and soft. No beginning. No ending. Only quiet being. Without edges. If the universe stopped producing energy, existence would feel perfectly at rest. No motion. No effort. Only infinite calm. Holding everything gently. We've drifted a long way together tonight. From motion to stillness. From energy to quiet. From change to rest. And all the while, you've been part of this universe. The atoms in your body were formed in ancient stars. The iron in your blood the calcium in your bones, the carbon in every breath, were once scattered across dark space. The same universe that could one day grow quiet is the universe that shaped you. And just like the universe in this story, you don't need to produce anything right now. You don't need to move. You don't need to change. You are allowed to rest. The darkness is not empty. It is gentle. It is patient. It holds everything without effort. And for this moment, it holds you too. Tonight, while you sleep, the universe continues quietly on its way. Stars drift slowly. Galaxies turn without urgency. Space stretches softly. And you don't need to follow any of it. You can let the darkness carry everything. You can let your thoughts loosen and fade. You can rest inside the calm. You are a small warmth in a vast, quiet universe. Safe. Supported. At rest. If you're still awake, you can drift a little deeper now. And if you're already asleep, that's perfectly okay. Sleep well. And dream softly.